From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. Today we learn about narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Spoiler alert, they're not superpowers. And now, broadcasting from our secret underground lair, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Yeah, I like it, because I have been seeing this stupid thing all over the internet now forever, that everybody has psychopathy and sociopathy and Machiavellianism and narcissism and oh my gosh, it's spilling into therapy, because the people that I'm talking to each week, they're telling me oh, I took the test, and we need to talk about the fact that I have a diagnosed personality disorder of Machiavellianism. And I'm like, the Italian author and philosopher? What? Hey, I don't know that I've heard that one before. And yeah, I've been seeing this a lot.
There's been, I've noticed in a lot of the in the psychology journals, a large eruption of diagnosis of...
It has been everywhere.
No, I was going to say of...
Machiavellianism.
Machiavellianism.
Yeah, there's been a plague.
Yeah. And don't even get started on the Nietzscheism.
Yeah.
It's
the Nietzscheism. Yeah, there's been this breakout of Renaissance. It's Leonardoism and Donatelloism. It's getting really weird. So yeah,
I caught Da Vincianism.
It's getting outrageous, Da Vincianism. So we're definitely going to talk about that. We're definitely going to talk about what is referred to as the dark triad. And so a lot of people have been asking us about this. There's a lot of tweeting about it, and a lot of my patients have been talking about it. So if you have been anywhere on the internet in the last probably couple of years, you've probably been seeing the emergence of this concept, what is referred to as the dark triad. So first point, there is nothing called the dark triad in actual medical psychology. Nobody ever taught a class on this. We don't have this in the DSM-5.
Right.
I've been diagnosed with 2/3 of the dark triad. 60% triad, man. It reminds me of Zelda. Every time I hear this, I think of the Triforce. Zelda holding it over his head, and it's
it seems like a gang that you would get initiated into.
Yeah, I would totally jump into
dark
that.
triads.
Yeah, are you a triad? Oh, dark triad. Oh shit. It's a whole nother thing. So the dark triad basically got started in about 2002. So in 2002, these two Canadian psychologists kind of coined the term, and basically for them, they were doing a study about 3 character traits that they wanted to understand. So psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. Now here's some of the challenges, I think, about 2/3 of those words. Machiavellianism refers to Niccolo Machiavelli, a philosopher from Italy who wrote a book a long time ago called The Prince. And basically it was a work about political philosophy in which he argued that a ruler should do what is best for the ruler. And this is where you get that old question of is it better to be feared or better to be loved? Mm-hmm. Should a ruler want the people to love them so much that they're obedient, or should they fear the ruler and do what the ruler says? And Machiavelli makes the argument that if you're going to be the boss, it's better that they fear you. So it's led to this long-term debate about leadership and things like that. Most people put Machiavelli in the category of being a bad person because he was arguing that the king sort of has the right to rule, should do whatever they want, nobody should question the king. Everybody from that era, by the way, historical footnote here, knows that Machiavelli wrote that to impress a very specific ruler so that person would reward him. So he wrote basically political propaganda. That's nice. All it kind of was. But anyway, flash forward to all these years later, this study was trying to measure Machiavellianism, which they kind of define as actually I have the definition here. They define it as a tendency to be manipulative and deceitful. It usually stems from a lack of respect or disillusionment for others. And the study also wanted to lump in narcissism and psychopathy. The challenges with this immediately were that narcissistic personality disorder is a real thing.
Right.
But narcissism is also a word we use to describe everybody.
Right.
Ex-boyfriends, anybody you don't like, your boss, they're narcissists.
In the same way that we talk about OCD.
Right.
There's
I
an
like those
diagnosis.
Dishes really clean.
Yeah.
I have OCD.
Yeah. And then there's just people who are clean.
A guy who is hospitalized because he has OCD. So definitely a wide disparity. And psychopathy is the same thing. Psychopathy is another one of those words where it's oh, that person is a psychopath. and it's like, show me the diagnosis of psychopath. Like, we have antisocial personality disorder, and that used to be called a sociopath, right?
Right.
But we don't exactly have these terms that really fit, right? There is such a thing as having a psychotic episode, and you know, in the DSM-5, psychotic episode means hallucinations, you know, like a break from real reality. But obviously this test is using that word psychopathy in like the colloquial way, the same way they're using narcissism. So they define narcissism as an egotistical preoccupation with yourself because all of your experiences maintain your self-image. And people who score higher in narcissism often appear charming, but their narcissism will later lead to extreme difficulty in developing close relationships. And then they define psychopathy, the third leg of the triad, as reflecting shallow emotional responses, a relative lack of emotional leads, resulting in high stress tolerance, low empathy for others, little guilt, and leads them to seek extremely stimulating activities, resulting in impulsivity and a disposition toward interpersonal conflict. Okay, so together, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy make up what has been called, or at least was coined in 2002, as this dark triad. Well, just that name, the dark triad, was so sexy.
Still, I picture like a leather jacket.
We need a biker
some kind
gang.
of, some
dark triad.
I want to draw a logo for this really bad.
Hey, draw us a logo. And
she's
in the next
she's already
comic,
working on her.
We want to be in a biker gang called the Dark Triads. It needs to be an upside-down triangle. And we need to be part of the Dark Triads. And so, yeah, so since 2002, this concept became so sexy and caught on that there's been 1,700 further published research about these concepts. And that's fine, because there's also, published research about, how many dogs are brown. It's not necessarily relevant or medical, but it gets funded because it's interesting. And so there's more of that being published.
And that is a good point.
Yes.
The funding part
is a huge
research,
aspect of research.
That is what drives research.
Oh, it is. Yeah,
and
that's
so it doesn't,
why.
Even things that could be really useful for us to know, if there's no way to profit off of it,
they're not doing it. Yeah,
then there's nobody who's going to fund that research.
It's so funny because one of the things you learn whenever you learn how to do research is how to create flashy titles.
Right, yeah.
Interesting proposals so that you can actually get funded. But I
wonder how much research now is really just pushed by the fact that they think about, BuzzFeed would buy that.
You're not wrong.
Yeah,
that's totally true.
Oh, yeah, that's some good clickbait.
How many radio show jocks in the morning will quote my article or quote my research as groundbreaking and changes everything? Well, the dark triad crap falls into that category. And so there's now been so much to do about it that an actual new study has come out by Miller here in 2019. The study is called A Critical Appraisal of the Dark Triad Literature and Suggestions for Moving Forward. It's by Miller et al. In the University of Georgia. And we'll post a link to the actual study in the show notes. You can click it here in the description. But basically, it's very, very critical. And so now we're starting to have a robust debate because the general population has now been inundated with this concept of narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and there's been all these news articles that have come out from this. You've probably seen the headlines. I've seen several of them out there, and that's actually what caused Miller and his colleagues to say, hey, we've got to address this. There's been titles like Why a Little Evil is Good in the headlines, or Republicans have more psychopathic traits than Democrats. And they can get away with that because the word psychopath is not a diagnostic term.
Right.
You can say that.
Yeah, you can say that about anything.
And it makes people think, oh my God, there's more diagnosed psychopaths that are Republicans than Democrats? No, that's not a diagnostic term. But that was a real headline. There was another one about CEOs that you may have seen. It was psychopathic new business media sales executive superstar, or the positive qualities that psychopaths have, or 50% of all CEOs have psychopathic traits, or whatever. That all comes from this crap, this dark triad test that you can take.
Right.
And we will also post a link to the actual test, the dark triad test, which is available at openpsychometrics.org. So we both took the test.
Yes, we did.
We're going to take the test. We're going to reveal our results. And then we're also going to discuss...
And I took the survey after the test.
The survey that you had to type in your bank account.
My laptop is just crawling with viruses right now.
As soon as I saw that survey, I skipped it instantly.
I didn't realize you could skip it. I did not see that button, so they
I'm
got
like,
me.
Nick, why is it taking you so long on this test? That he's like, wait, I'm taking the survey afterward. I'm like, dude, do not take that survey. Like, the one that's asking you, like, your age, your tax bracket. Are you the only person in the house right now?
It was all
what
about,
a list of your fears are.
It was all about cosmetics.
Yeah?
What cosmetics do I purchase?
Oh, wow. Well,
and
that
why?
Seems relevant.
Yeah.
That was probably the real test.
Yeah.
That was probably the
So
real...
something about the way I answered these questions
made it think that maybe you would like to have makeup on.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to hear your results. So we took the Dark Triad test. Let's go line by line. So in the order I have them is narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy. Is that
Correct.
the order you have?
Yes.
Okay, so narcissism, preoccupation with self. You can score between 0 and 4 in the trait, and then it will tell you the percentile that you kind of landed in. Like how many humans tend to score that is kind of how I interpret that. So what was your score for narcissism?
I want to guess yours first.
You want to play it that way?
Yeah,
you want to guess each other's?
Yeah.
All right, so the score is between 0 and 4. So a 0 indicates you have none of the trait. A 4 represents that you have as much of the trait as the test can test for. Okay. What do you think I got?
4.5.
I think you scored 0.25% over.
I think you got extra credit.
Allowable. Yeah.
No, I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess 2.2.
I got a 3. A 3 out of 4.
3 out of 4.
It put me at the 62nd percentile. So it said, I guess that means that 62%. I'm higher than. Oh, there it is. It says the percentile is what percent of other people who have taken the test who you score higher than.
Yes.
So I am more narcissistic than 62% of other people.
Correct.
Okay. That's
right,
okay.
well,
I'm fine with that.
The validity in my mind.
Because I'm better than 62%
in my mind, the validity of this test just skyrocketed.
You know what? I changed all my commentary. Everything I was going to say to bash this test, it's actually validated. Okay, so your narcissism score. So 0 to 4, thinking about the questions and how they were worded, I think you would have overcorrected because I think the questions were like, do people compare you to celebrities? And do you tend to think that you're, a special person? I think you would have overcorrected. So I think you're either going to be between 0... you know what? I'm going to put it at 0.75.
No. 1.6.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty
11th percentile.
11th percentile. That you scored only higher than 11% of people.
Correct.
So like 89% of people
scored higher than
think that they are more narcissistic than you are.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you overcorrected, but that's fine.
Well, no, hold on though. But you bring up a good point. It's like how you take this test.
Yes.
If you answer the questions as honestly as you possibly can,
right,
as opposed to answering the questions trying to figure out what they want,
right,
and then trying to
or how you feel you should answer the question.
Yes, because
I'm a good moral human. I don't think I'm better than other people. Yeah.
Right.
But this also goes to the language of those questions.
Yes, which we'll get to.
Yeah, the language of the questions anyway. The second trait was Machiavellianism, and Machiavellianism, again, is the tendency to be manipulative and deceitful. It usually stems from a lack of respect or disillusionment for others. All right, so guess mine. What do you think my score was? 0 to 4. What was my score?
I'm going to guess slightly lower than narcissism. I'm going to guess 2.8.
You're not wrong. It was 2.4. We're off by 0.4. That is not bad. That is pretty dead on balls.
So what, 30th percentile?
Oh, yeah, it's 35th. 35%. Okay, so yours, Machiavellianism. Now, what's interesting about that is being manipulative. And I remember those questions were really on the nose. It was like, do you manipulate others? Do you think you should hold their secrets to use against them in a court of law?
Yeah.
Like, I think you would have answered pretty negatively on those. I'm going to put you at sub 1. So I think it's another 0.75.
2.2.
Whoa, you scored right next to me?
Yes.
Interesting. Freaking Machiavellist. Whatever that is. I'm going to start using that as an insult.
Right.
I'm going to yell that out
That's
of my car.
That's a long insult.
Yeah, I'm going to get cut off. Like, you Machiavellian piece of shit.
I want to hear that during the next Knights game. Evander Kane, you Machiavellian.
Machiavellist. What? What is that? Is that a fascist? Well, not really. What is that? Well, it means he has a lot of disregard for others and it tends to be manipulative. All right, so we were pretty close on that one. All right. Third trait, psychopathy, which they describe as shallow emotional responses, lack of empathy for others, showing little guilt, and a desire for extremely stimulating activities, being impulsive. That's an awful lot of definition for one word that's non-diagnostic, isn't it? Kind of ridiculous. All right, so what do you think my psychopathy score was? 0 to 4.
I'm gonna guess under 2. I'm gonna guess 1.7.
I was 0.7.
Oh,
so you're off by one. But yeah, on the lower end of the scale.
Okay.
And I think especially because it asks those questions of like, do you need to do risk-taking behaviors? Do you need to like? And I was like, no. Like I like to watch Disney movies.
No, I forgot about that.
Like that's my Friday night. Tonight I'm going to eat Chinese and watch Disney. All right. So yours, I think that it would. I think you'd actually tick toward psychopathy in this case. Now, obviously, I think that word is bogus.
Right.
But because of the questions having to do with like being active and like running, jumping, climbing trees, I think it did score you higher. And so I'm going to say you scored 2.5.
1.3.
Okay, yeah, I guess I was equally wrong. So, yeah, so 1.3. So you were actually not too far from me.
Right.
You were 0.5 away from me. 7th
percentile for me on that one.
Okay, yeah. So let's take a look at the test. So it doesn't give you an answer. It doesn't say you are anything. It's not like that stupid bogus Myers-Briggs, which, by the way, is bogus. Nobody should ever use it. It is a piece of crap. It is debunked science, and it is the most profitable psychometric test that's ever been produced. Myers and Briggs are living fat and happy on their own private islands.
Why haven't we done that?
Yeah, well, dude, we need to. It's one of the reasons I cannot write a self-help book is because I can't do that. Like, I cannot produce cheesy content that everybody can relate to because I'll feel bad. Like, I'll feel morally bad and filthy rich. Maybe
you're the co-host. You're the co-host of Pod Therapy. What do you mean you can't produce cheesy content?
That's already been done. We're not exactly rolling in riches, Nick. We're recording into little sound boxes on my desk.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't even have a studio. I don't think so. People can hear our squeaky chairs.
Yeah.
I don't think that we're exactly rolling in it. All right, so your impression of the test, Nick, looking at the questions and thinking back to the questions, and I'm actually going to pull up the questions again.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, I want to.
I think the thing for me that going through this that I was thinking about while taking the test, number one is I can't help but try to guess or assume what the test is trying to assess for in trying to answer that question based off of what I believe it is, right? So they're going to ask a question that has something to do with my leadership abilities. Right. And do people see me as a leader? Right. Yeah. So all of a sudden, I'm like, my mind goes to, okay, what are they trying to ask here? So I'm trying to answer the question underneath the question, which makes it kind of unreliable.
Well, yes, but the questions are so leading.
Right, they are.
And in no way do they like authoritatively point toward the topic.
Yeah.
Like one of the questions was, I like to associate with important people. Or no, it says I like to get acquainted with important people.
Yeah, I scored. I said most affirmative.
Strongly agree.
Strongly agree.
Of course you did.
Yeah,
because what kind of human isn't going to say yes? No. I mean, anytime I see a Hollywood TV star, I go hide in the trunk of my car.
Right.
Yeah. No. Like you. Oh my God, there to take a picture. Right. Oh, I want if like Penn and Teller were walking down the hallway and they were like, hi, how are you today? Like,
yeah,
would you not try to get to know them?
Would my life be better or worse if I knew the mayor of Las Vegas personally?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Come on, So, like, in no way does that imply a trait about you. That's mostly human.
The other thing that kind of was troubling for me was understanding really what the difference is between disagree and strongly disagree. Right? Because there's several of those questions where it's like, I went back and forth, like, well, yes, I disagree. I don't know the magnitude of my disagreement.
It is such a poor test. There was a question on there, I have never gotten into trouble with the law.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So what does that mean? Like,
exactly.
If you follow the law, then you're not these things. But if you've gotten a speeding ticket, you're Machiavellian.
So, I'm guessing that one's probably
that's ridiculous.
with the psychopathy.
Breaking rules. Like it's antisocial PD if you're heading in that direction.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, but even if, I don't know. I guess you'd have to make the argument that people who break the law often are more psychopathic, which maybe,
it's an echo of a diagnostic criteria of antisocial PD because, there's going to be really negative consequences.
I would say it's correlation.
Yeah, but it's just they jump way too far. Like, it's just dumb. So, a lot of this thing was, really overwhelmingly stupid. payback needs to be quick and nasty.
Yeah.
It's the best question I've ever seen.
I didn't know how to answer that.
Psychological instrument. Payback needs to be quick and nasty. Strongly agree. Like, what?
I really had no idea how to answer that.
Whatever it takes, you must get the important people on your side. So that implies that if you say yes, you're Machiavellian, you're manipulative. And it's like,
well, and I guess,
what if I'm insecure?
Right.
Like, what if I'm not Machiavellian? What if I'm really scared and I have anxiety and I would like important people to protect me?
Well,
like, what about that?
But to me, the important word in that or phrase is whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
I agree.
So then I was like, well, disagree, but then do I strongly disagree with that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It was stupid. Like, there were some that made sense. Like, I hate being the center of attention, right? So if you say no to that, then okay, that they're going to score you narcissistic or whatever. But, I mean, I use clever manipulation to get my way. That's kind of on the nose, you know?
Right,
Like, I kind of know where you're going to get. I like to get revenge on authorities. Like,
yeah.
What? Like, so some of the stuff was really dumb. So, okay. So, after effect of taking the test, is it reliable? What do we think about the dark triad? What do you think about what these kinds of tests do as far as informing the general public about this? And like, what are your kind of hot takes on that?
That's tough. What is it? I guess I would ask, is it useful? And I don't really know as if it is.
Right.
Because I think on one hand, you could look at this test and say, you know, how many people are going to take this test and then send it to somebody else to take it, and then, oh, I need to have my boyfriend take this test, or I need to have my girlfriend take this test.
Yeah.
And I think it could get carried away very easily. I think people could read into it and you know, want to see, you know, like, well, what are you going to score in the Machiavellian? Because
it really misinforms. And like, so for me, I hate this test. I hate everything that it embodies, and I hate the effect it has on the public. So, like, the effects I have noticed clinically. This is not make-believe. This is not what if. This is not, like, this is a true anecdote. Like, I've had a patient in the last 2 weeks, I'll keep it that broad, but that recent, who has come in, who has said to me, I need to talk to you. I have narcissistic personality disorder. And this is an ongoing patient. I've had them for months. And I'm like, I'm not going to say, no, you don't, move on. I'm going to say, you seem really frightened. Let's talk about that.
Right.
And it was, well, I took the stupid test, and somebody called me that, and now I've realized I have that, and it's a real problem. This person is extremely successful, like extremely wealthy, extremely successful, and stands out in a lot of ways. And they've been called a narcissist by other people and selfish. And now they're like, I think I have narcissistic personality disorder. Right. And it's like, okay. And the reason that this book is sitting on my desk right now, this book, Diagnosis Made Easier, is because and the reason it is bookmarked to narcissism right now is because I had to pull it out and explain. Narcissistic personality disorder is a real thing that we have diagnostic criteria for. Let me explain what this is. Because if there's not a clinically significant amount of distress, this is not something I can diagnose.
Right.
And so this dark triad thing comes up, and then I think, A, it misinforms the public, because then people think Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and narcissism are a lot easier to fall into than they probably really are, and it confuses the public to think that those are medical terms. And then it also weaponizes words that are trying to pretend to be mental health words.
Right.
And that really bugs me.
Yeah, and it does get confusing to look at these.
Nobody's
and to
using
think,
these in flattering ways.
Right. Well, and to think like, you can look at these and think all three of these are an actual diagnosis.
Yeah, the dark triad. I've been diagnosed with the dark triad.
Right.
Like, that sounds like an STD.
Like,
you should take penicillin immediately. Like, that's what that sounds like.
Yeah.
But, you know, and that's what I'm seeing in real terms. And then the public, it also, I think it has another after effect, which is whenever you say, 50% of successful CEOs are psychopathic or psychopathic or...
Right.
Have narcissistic personality disorder or whatever, score on the dark triad. That implies that evil is good. It implies, their success could be best emulated, not because they went and got a business degree and they know how economics works, but it's because they are immoral.
Right, yeah.
It's like, come on.
So the reason I haven't had success and haven't made millions of dollars is because I'm not a big enough asshole.
And then it dissociates morality from success. And it teaches us that, you know what, good guys finish last and bad people win, and so we should all start fading in that direction.
Like the Gordon Gekko type philosophy.
Greed is good. Yeah. And like, I'm comfortable with us having a moral conversation about things like that. I'm comfortable with having a political philosophy conversation about that. I am not comfortable with having a mental health conversation about that. Because that implies that people should go against their own virtues and values in order to be successful. That's incongruent, and that will cause less mental health, not more. And so that kind of thing really bothers me. So my verdict on the Dark Triad, and this might just be me being a Machiavellian narcissist psychopath.
You did score a 3 on narcissism.
But I, for one, am against it. Coming out hard against it, Tingeman. Coming out hard against it.
That's what a 3 would say.
How Machiavellian of you, Jeff. So, not getting the pod therapy bump from this side of the table.
Yeah.
I don't hear you being very enthusiastic about it either.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was kind of a...
I had fun.
Yeah, this was a fun thing to do.
But even how you played with it and you were like, yup, Jim's a narcissist. That's what people do.
Right.
Is they take it and then somebody else thinks, I knew my ex-boyfriend was this. Or I knew the CEO of such and such was this. Or whatever. My boss is this.
Plus, Machiavellianism, we learn a new word. So now we have a new one that we can throw around at people.
If you'd like to take the test, you can jump in there into our description. We'll post the link. But also, please read the study, the Miller study that debunks this thing and explains why it's harmful to society. We're more on Miller's side.
I think so. Yeah.
But,
that's the thing, too, with personality. When we talk about the personality disorders, right?
Yes.
You talked about the clinically significant level of distress that we use for any diagnosis.
Right.
It becomes a little bit more difficult, right, when you're talking about personality disorders, because in most of those, the individual themselves doesn't really have a problem with it.
Yeah, and
it's
as
the
we're
people
talking,
around
I'm
them.
even opening up the book here because I want to take a second to talk about this. So this and this is understandably fuzzy, and I don't want to beat this topic too much more. We have questions I want to move on to, but when we're talking about a personality disorder, listen to this. This is from the textbook, Diagnosis Made Easier, Principles and Techniques for Mental Health Clinicians by James Morrison. And in the chapter on personality disorders, there are a lot of them. They are very diverse. But here's the first piece that they talk about. General description of a personality disorder is a lasting, inflexible pattern of inner experience and behavior different from the cultural expectations that presents problems in 2 or more of these areas: thinking, emotions, interpersonal relationships, and impulse control. This begins at an early age and manifests itself in a variety of work, social, and interpersonal situations. So personality disorders are a vague thing already. They're hard to diagnose. And when we're talking about them, we usually have 3 types of personality disorders, like we have those clusters or whatever. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about things like paranoid personality disorder, schizoid or schizotypal disorder, which is going to be like having to do with your ability to sense emotion and, make eye contact, having flat affect. Antisocial personality disorder is the one that reflects in what people call sociopathy or being a psychopath. My boyfriend or girlfriend was a psychopath or a sociopath. What you're really describing is antisocial personality disorder, which is evident in people who break so many laws that they're usually in jail.
Right.
So, we have a word for it. A lot of people have heard of borderline personality disorder, which is a complicated pattern of unstable impulse control, interpersonal relationships, moodiness, and self-image. But a lot of people throw that word around. Mm-hmm. Oh, that person was so borderline. A lot of clinicians throw this word around.
I was going to say that
and that pisses me off.
Yeah.
Half of your caseload is borderline.
Yeah.
I think that you're describing something that's not by definition a disorder.
Right.
If it's not atypical. But yes, there is something called histrionic personality disorder, and we should really do a whole A block on the personality disorders, but I won't read them all here. But my point is this: as I read this book, I just want to make sure everybody understands we are usually very hesitant to diagnose a personality disorder. And the way you treat a personality disorder, in a lot of ways, is helping them manage it and learn about it so that they can navigate life more successfully. You're not trying to fix them, right? And one little last point that I want to make about this topic, especially because of President Trump, a lot of people use narcissistic personality disorder, and they talk about Trump that way.
Yeah, we got in a little bit of a Twitter feud on that one.
We did. And
by we, I mean you mostly.
Yeah, me and Dr.
I had your back.
Lee. Thank you.
I had your back.
Yeah, and Dr. Lee says, I've diagnosed him as narcissistic personality disorder. He's a danger to society. Part of the definition of narcissistic personality disorder is having an delusional view of your own self-importance. Donald Trump is the president of the most powerful and richest nation in the history of humanity. He can launch nuclear bombs in every direction and end the human species at any moment. If he comments on the treasury or the inflation rate, he can change the economy, literally with words coming out of his mouth. Yes, he is the most important human on the planet right now, and that's part of what's so off-putting about him. Yes, that he probably shouldn't be.
Right.
But he does not have a delusional view of his self-worth. He really is the most important, most famous human alive today, and all of our lives are deeply affected by his existence. So, like, he's not got a personality delusion. He's right.
Yeah, and I'm
uncomfortable with that, but he's not wrong.
I don't want to get too far into this because this could be another whole A block. But from my perspective, okay, yeah, that's great, but you don't have to have the diagnosis. If you have
be a bad person.
Yeah, well, not only that, but like you can have issues with Donald Trump, which a lot of people do. I myself do, but I don't have to throw in adding the diagnosis doesn't strengthen my argument that he's incompetent.
Make it more true. Yeah, somebody can be unqualified for office because they're a criminal,
exactly,
not because they also may have mental health.
He's
patterns.
Just as incompetent if he was completely mentally healthy.
All right, we've made enough hay of this topic.
Anyway, yeah,
it's time to move on.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we discuss being a supportive sibling in a mental health crisis. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is David Datascoop Villalon. David is a prolific writer, huge supporter of mental health, and if you want to read his blog, you can go to www.wgdavid.com and check it out. One of the articles that I've been reading lately is under the category funny. It is a more recent one, came out in January. It's about a home invasion after living most of his life in Airbnbs and what it's like to have a home invasion. But also, you must not pass up on my favorite one, Short People at Brothels. Just a fantastic... I know I've referenced it before, but it is my favorite article. It is the story of going to a brothel and being a short man at a brothel.
That's... The part about the home invasion one, is there stuff in there that's humorous? Because you're laughing as he's talking about
it's funny. It's very funny. Yeah,
I just want to
it's
clarify.
A very funny article. Highly recommend.
You're talking about that and you're laughing. And
it's good.
And
it's
we just finished having
a
discussion about psychopathy, and now I'm wondering, okay.
Yeah, if you would like to join David and support the show, you can go to www.patreon.com and sign up. That's patreon.com/therapy and sign up.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about being a supportive sibling.
Hello, gentlemen. It's your old friend Jeff, but this time I have a completely new problem. My older sister was recently admitted to a mental health clinic. It's been difficult to get much information from her caretakers, and they are not very forthcoming with me, but it appears that my sister had a psychotic break of some sort, resulting in extreme paranoia and mild hallucinations. For some background, it all started last week when her fiancé came home and found her crawling on the ground crying. My sister genuinely believed herself to be a 9-month-old and behaved as such. Her fiancé rushed her to the hospital and they could not find anything wrong with her physically. So after they ran all the tests, she was sent to a mental health clinic, and they put a 72-hour hold on her. While in the hospital, she believed her nurse was the actual Jesus Christ, which struck our family as extremely odd, since we're all atheists and have been so since forever. I was allowed to visit her in the clinic, and the woman who I saw at the doorway was not my sister. She had lost a substantial amount of weight and was disoriented. She kept asking me if everyone she loved was okay, and no matter how many times I reassured her, she was convinced that something she could do or say might kill them. She asked me the same several questions dozens of times, including if I had ever lied to her, and if she didn't have a question for me, was that okay? I cried during my visit, which made her upset, and she demanded to know why I was crying. The next day was better, and we played some Candyland. She asked me if I was using the game to send her secret messages, but she stopped herself and said, "No, that's just the paranoia, isn't it?" She ended the visit by telling me she feels like she's doing better, but does not want me to come back. She said she didn't want to see me again, and that she was sure of that. Her fiancé told me not to worry about it and that my sister isn't all there, but hearing that from the family member I was closest to broke my heart. I tried just calling the next day, but she didn't believe that it was me on the other end. Then she said this is dumb and hung up. She rejected any further calls from me. Nick and Jim, I would really like some help here if you can. I want to be supportive to my sister and help her, but how can I do that when she is pushing me away and not accepting my calls? I know this is a lot to unpack. I mostly just needed to put my thoughts down and get some ideas and feedback. I love the show, appreciate everything you guys do, including you, Jacob. Longtime listener, Jeff, the Scoops of War.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thanks for the letter. And I'm very glad you wrote this in, because we do spend a lot of time, answering questions from folks dealing with problems themselves. We don't get a whole lot of questions about, I'm a family member of somebody with a mental health issue.
Yeah.
So this is a really good one for us to address. And I think there's a lot of people, hopefully there's a lot of people listening to this who can kind of relate to that, because it is very common. I've worked with a lot of family members, and it is something that you can't really prepare yourself for.
Yeah.
It's something that it just happens, and there's no handbook for how to deal with it. It's incredibly scary. It's stressful because you feel like you've known this person your entire life, and all of a sudden it feels like it's a completely different person.
Right.
Like, how do you know how to deal with that? So first off, I guess, thank you for writing this in. Thanks for being honest and open about it.
And I hope she's feeling better soon.
Absolutely. That's huge.
Yeah, and so, Jeff, a little bit of feedback here. So first off, and I want to be careful here, we are not diagnosing her, okay? I have not treated your sister. I have not evaluated your sister. That is not what we're going to do. But to look at your description of what we're hearing here, this does sound like schizophrenia. And it sounds like she's having a psychotic episode as well. So little things that jump off the page that even as I was reading it, Nick, you and I were both kind of nodding because we've heard these symptoms a million times. And it's very common. And so that's also something, Jeff, I don't want you to be very scared. This is very treatable. This is something a lot of people manage very well. They get better. It is going to be a medicinal treatment, usually. That's going to be a big part of it, as well as psychotherapy. But let's talk a little bit about what jumps off the story that makes us think schizophrenia. And Nick, if you disagree, tell us. But I think we're both pointing in the same direction here. So we see paranoia.
Yep.
We see secret messages in Candyland. The detection of secret messages is something that's usually going to be consistent, right? So that's part of delusion or hallucination. We're seeing dissociation, where she believes that she is somebody else, and so she's thinking that she is, the 9-year-old on the floor. We are seeing hallucination and delusion whenever she's interpreting another human as being Jesus Christ.
Right.
That's more delusion, because there is a physical human there. She's not seeing something that isn't there.
Right.
She is deeply misinterpreting the situation.
Which is interesting that she's an atheist and sees this, because most of the time, I don't know, but like most of the time, well, I guess
I know where you're going with that.
Because most of the time that I hear about this, it is usually people who already have an existing religious belief. But then we could also say that most of the people in the United States already have an existing religious belief.
So if a person is deeply religious and they have schizophrenia, their delusions or hallucinations may manifest as religious in nature, especially voices. If they're hearing voices, those voices may say something like really blasphemous about Jesus, and now they feel deeply scared that they've somehow believed that themselves and they're going to hell. But no, it doesn't surprise me too much, I guess, because at the end of the day, delusions and hallucinations are always frightening in nature and always supernatural in nature. People don't have a delusion that the American economy should go back to the gold standard because what we have right now probably isn't fiscally stable for the next 30 years. Their delusion is there's a monster. Their delusion is this guy is the risen Messiah, Jesus Christ, right? Their delusion is something really big, or their hallucination is, that there's a monster crawling out of their skin or something like that, or that there's bugs in their body, or anyway. So some of these symptoms that we're hearing here, Jeff, these sound consistent with what we might hear as schizophrenia. And, even her fear of you, not trusting you, believing that you're conspiring against her, believing that she could hurt other people with her words, that she can affect the world, being fearful of that, and then her hanging up on you on the phone call and saying, listen, I don't want to talk to you. It isn't even you, right? You're against me. All of these symptoms are really consistent with that word schizophrenia. And to come back to what that is, schizophrenia is what we call a psychotic disorder. And that word psychotic is really intimidating to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But this is what we're talking about when we say the word psychotic. We mean that you are seeing things that are not there, or that you are or hearing things that are not there, or sensing things that are not there, right? Which we call hallucinations. And then you are fundamentally misunderstanding your reality in a way that is not consistent, which we call delusion. And so I've had patients that have believed that they look up at the stars at night, and they believe the stars were twinkling in such a way as to give them messages. And so that's a normal feature, right? Because they are detecting hidden messages in the radio, in television. They might believe that Oprah's talking to them, and they can believe that there are hidden messages in Candyland. And so this all goes back to a common diagnosis that we call schizophrenia. It is very treatable.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing, too, is to really make sure that we're sending the message to you that like there's this Hollywood made-up version of schizophrenia, which is that she's going to kill you in her sleep.
She's dangerous.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you just saw,
absolutely.
A person suffering from schizophrenia is not an Olympic athlete.
Right.
Okay, they are not a ninja.
Right.
They are not able to do some supernatural thing or conspire against you. In fact, they're all too happy to tell you that they don't trust you and that Candyland is talking to them. It's not a well-kept secret.
Is there... Jim, do you know of a movie that actually portrayed it really well?
Schizophrenia?
Yeah.
A Beautiful Mind.
That's what I was going to say, too.
Yeah, A Beautiful Mind did a great job of showing it from his perspective through the whole movie.
Yeah.
And at the very end showing you what was real.
Right.
And allowing the audience to believe with the person who is ill in the story.
Yeah.
And then only afterward to start questioning their own conclusions and questioning all the facts and realizing, wait, I was way off.
Yeah.
And so in that one, he was hallucinating people that weren't there. He had a deluded view of the world. He was paranoid. A Beautiful Mind, starring Russell Crowe, is a great one. He was highly functional, too.
Yes.
And so in this case, but he also wasn't highly functional in a lot of ways. He did ultimately need care.
Yeah.
And so the thing I want you to understand,
but
Jeff,
I guess, he adapted.
He adapted to it.
Yeah. And to highlight a good point here, a high point in Jeff's letter is when she talks about, oh, wait, that's the paranoia, isn't it?
Yes.
That, I think, is a great sign.
Yes.
That's a sign of progress. Whatever kind of medications that they have her on appear to be working, which makes me think that, these other things that she's saying, like, I don't want to see you again, that's not permanent. Right? I mean, she's making statements based off where she's at. And part of that could be part of the delusions. Maybe she feels like she doesn't know you or doesn't trust you, or it could just be that she realizes what she may look like, and it's kind of off-putting, and she doesn't want you to see her that way.
Could be that.
Yeah. So there's, but either way, I think, keep in mind that that's what she's saying right now.
Yes. And Nick, you nailed it. The fact that she caught herself and said, wait, that's the paranoia, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That is fantastic. Mm-hmm. The combination of treatment for somebody that's going through something psychotic like this, like schizophrenia or any other psychotic symptoms, is their psychiatrist is usually going to put them on what's called an antipsychotic, which has to do with recalibrating the biochemicals in the brain so that the hallucinations tamp down and so that they're able to have clarity of thinking in a lot of cases. That's part of it. And then the other part is the psychotherapy, which is helping her cope with, this is a paranoid delusion, it's not real. That is my first take, that is my first instinct. How do I question that, and how do I arrive on something that's true? Mm-hmm. And that's not very distant, Jeff, from what I have to do as somebody who has anxiety. My first instinct is to feel anxious and fearful, and I have to do self-talk and use my tools to say, wait a minute, Jim, this is your anxiety, this is not real. And so it's very similar to that. For them, it can be a different kind of technique to kind of get them there. But, Nick and I, when we've run programs that had people that not only had these severe illnesses, which this is classified as a severe mental illness or a serious mental illness, we call this an SMI, but they also had co-occurring substance abuse disorders. Right. And it's actually very common for that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, very difficult.
Because they are self-medicating.
Right. Self-medicating is part of it. I mean, there are some folks, I think, that maybe got into the substance use early, and then that maybe, I don't think that necessarily caused the serious mental illness, but it was probably an early coping skill that they used. And because, if I'm dealing with hallucinations and all this, I'm dealing with all this stress, having having a few beers or a case of beer can really help me deal with that,
right?
Then that becomes the coping mechanism.
Well, I mean, from your experience, Nick, I know what my answer would be, but whenever you think back to patients who have had psychotic features or, true schizophrenia, is there a substance that you tend to notice they gravitate toward?
Yes. I mean, it's common. I would see stimulants.
Yeah.
A lot of like
I tend
meth.
to see meth. Yeah,
meth is
my
pretty
answer.
common. But I'll also see people. Well, I guess.
And that
some
always
folks,
made it difficult to
would,
diagnose because if they're using meth, we can't diagnose schizophrenia because psychotic episode is a feature.
I would see some clients use things like marijuana to kind of help calm them down,
right?
But they wouldn't use it if the marijuana had hallucinations or side effects like that. Then they would definitely avoid it.
I agree with you. It tended to be amphetamines. It tended to be meth.
Yeah.
I mean, they would also mix in downers and things like that. So, I mean, the point there, and this is to everybody generally, Jeff, not necessarily to you, but it is extremely common if somebody's going through something like schizophrenia or hearing voices or things like that to try to self-medicate with more street drugs. And so, that's just one more thing to keep an eye on, everybody. And if you're out there and you have ever heard voices, or if you have a family member who has ever heard voices, I want you to understand that actually that is not as uncommon as you might think. Mm-hmm. There are lots of humans that are fully functional, they're able to go day to day, and they report that from time to time they have heard voices, or they have heard other kinds of hallucinations that aren't there. But if you yourself find yourself noticing things like shadow people that aren't there, you find yourself fixating on sounds and finding yourself imagining that there's a message for you in a radio or a podcast or in the television, or in even things that don't have a message like light bulbs or things like that. If you found yourself believing that other people are out to get you, or your car is being followed, or you're finding that you don't trust anybody, these may be symptoms that you might want to check in with a therapist about. Listen, we're not going to put you in the hospital, okay? We're not going to throw you away and throw away the key. We're going to make you feel better, and we're going to help. And there's a lot of folks out there, and I see them every week. I'm just part of their maintenance plan. They come see me, and they go back and they work at their job, wherever that is, and they take care of their family, and they have a good balance of medication and therapy, and they're highly successful. Yeah. And people can get better from this, and they do get better from this.
Hospitalization is used in the case where you're a threat to yourself
Stabilize
or someone
the crisis.
else.
That's
right.
it.
That's basically it. So, and the last piece of advice I got for you, Jeff, also is good self-care.
Yes.
If you're gonna be there for your sister, you have to be there for you first. You got to take care of yourself. So some resources, I would actually talk to her therapist about this and just let her therapist know, like, hey, this is some of the things that I'm going through, because I can guarantee you her therapist has heard that a million times.
Yes.
And she can set you up with referrals to wherever you need. There's probably some kind of family group or something that you can go to that will be very beneficial and will help you learn more about this and how to be supportive of people in this situation. That would be very beneficial for you. So I definitely recommend you talk to her therapist and get some pointers and some advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other area I want you to check out, Jeff, and this goes to everybody, I want you to go to NAMI, NAMI.org. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It is an organization made up of people who have experienced mental illness, and especially their friends and family. And so this is a place that is designed for you. It is designed for you, Jeff. It is designed for anybody out there who is the family member of somebody going through this, or if you have been touched by mental health, whether that's relational health, emotional health, anxiety like me. I was the president of NAMI in Southern Nevada, so, card-carrying member. And it's a place where you can find support groups and you can find information about everything you're going through, and that way you're not alone, and you and your family really should go, because this is not a temporary thing what your sister's experiencing. Mm-hmm. Unless this was induced by a medicine or induced by a drug, this is a condition. And it's important that you go get support from NAMI, especially the friends and families component of it. There's a support group in your city. You need to go to it, and you need to check in with other people who have family members in the same situation. Again, that's NAMI, NAMI.org, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Find the chapter in your area, and make sure you check that out, Jeff. I think it'd be a huge help.
Yeah, thanks for writing in. Thanks for supporting us.
Yes.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we will come back for announcements and thank yous. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Judi Scheider from Pod Therapy Derby fame, you might also know. And she wants to thank her dear friend, Dr. Hariardi Shashima Abdul Majid, and her amazing team members at Mercy Malaysia. Mercy Malaysia offers early counseling and psychosocial support for persons affected by disasters and gives the victims a safe space to express their feelings and thoughts. Sharima is currently caring for her father, who is suffering from Alzheimer's, while still organizing and planning for Mercy Malaysia when time allows. And Judi just wants her to know how proud she is of her astounding work ethic and let her know that she loves her, misses her warm hugs, and thinks about her wonderful father every day. And if you would like to support the show and join Judi and Jake, or Mr. Judi as he is sometimes referred to, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up to support us. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
Okay, we're back, and it's time for announcements and Patreon.
So the biggest announcement, guys, is that we are on the corner of May. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I want you guys to join us in making this May a huge success. Here's our big plan that we have been working on now for several months. In May, you are going to hear us launch a Kickstarter. So there's a website, it's kickstarter.com, and Pod Therapy is going to have an account up there, and for the whole month of May, we are going to be doing a fundraiser, and our goal is to raise enough money so that we can increase what we do with the show, so we can have more studio time, that we can increase the episodes that we do, so that we can ultimately expand what we're doing and hopefully even do something that might involve getting out of Las Vegas and kind of connecting to people where they're at. So we have a lot of ambitions, and we're hoping to put that money to good use. And so if you would be willing to support us, many of you already do financially, you can go down to Kickstarter and you can give us a bump, but most importantly, guys, you can help us share this show. And some of the feedback that we've been getting about this show is that we are talking about mental health in an accessible way, in a non-intimidating way, and giving people an idea that this is not something to be afraid of, that this is something it's okay to embrace. And guys, our fundraiser aside, the biggest and most important thing you can do this May is you can help add your voice to the chorus of people who are affected by real-life things, emotions, relationships, anxiety, depression, even stories like we heard today about schizophrenia. This is something that affects everybody. Mental health is part of health, and we need all of America to understand that this is not something we are ashamed of. So join us in the month of May to help raise awareness about mental health. And one really practical way that you can do that, pull out your cell phone, hit the memo app and hit record, and record us an audio postcard from you to us. You can be anonymous, but tell us your own story. Add some encouraging words to the listeners, telling all people everywhere why they should not be afraid of mental health, why it's okay to go see a therapist, and why they're proud to support mental health. And tell us a little bit about why you believe mental health is something that there is no shame in, there is no stigma in, and we will air those recordings on this show during the month of May. We're going to try to ramp up our contact with the audience, and so send us a recording so that we can put that into our show. Again, that just gets emailed to podtherapyguys@gmail.com, podtherapyguys@gmail.com. Keep it between 1 and 3 minutes, but tell your story a little bit. Tell us about your contact with mental health or family members, and help us normalize this so that people are not ashamed and they can celebrate mental health for the month of May.
We should add, for legal reasons, that by you sending it in, you understand that that's giving us permission to
We're going to play it. So if you want to use a fake name, you can use a fake name.
Yeah, you can be anonymous, whatever.
You can be anonymous, yeah. But if we receive it, we're just going to play it as is. Yep. We're not going to say who it came from. So it's up to you to make an audio postcard, guys. Pull out that phone, hit that record button. Don't worry about getting it right. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Just tell your truth, because the more voices that people can hear in the month of May talking about mental health, the more normal this conversation will be, and the more healthy we will be as a nation.
And book club is coming back.
Yes,
so,
pick up your copy of Maybe You Should Talk to Somebody.
Yes, by Lori Gottlieb.
A New York Times bestseller, thanks to Pod Therapy.
They're going fast.
So that's right.
Make sure you get your copy
as fast as you can.
Yeah, there's limited downloads available. So
that's right. So we have a new Theraproducer.
We do.
Pod. We have a new THERAPOD.
Yep. Scoopy Jess. Welcome to the party.
Welcome to the TheraParty. And we want to thank our Theraproducers. We want to thank all of our Elite Eight, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of the fan club. Thank you, Smitty Scoop. Thank you, Jake Schneider. Thank you, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint. Thank you, Kayla Lansbury. Thank you, David Data Scoop Villalon. Thank you, Judi Schneider. Thank you, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop. And thank you, Dr. Ben Don. And thank you, ex officio board member, Ellie O'Dare. And if you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited and enjoy our book club that's resurging in May or any of the other side projects that we do, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy. And thank you all for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and Jim's office in this case. And thanks to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget that you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter @PodTherapyGuys, and at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at www.podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Machiavelli.
Yes, you are. I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
It's funny, his name really was.
I know.
Nick. Oh, okay. Oh, so
I mean,
it
wasn't
that.
Nick.
That's
it was
why
like
you were making
Nick.
the joke.
Well,
Can I start calling you Niccolo? I feel like that should be...